Hello, dear 7th graders. Welcome to your new English lesson. Today, we will be talking about extreme sports. My name is Iva, and I'm your English teacher today. After today's lesson, you will be able to show understanding of a text about an extreme sport by listening, and you will describe an extreme sport in a poster using modal verbs could, can and can't, must and mustn't, and should and shouldn't. For today's lesson, you need a notebook, a pencil, a laptop, mobile phone or tablet with internet connection, and you need a QR code scanner. Keep in mind that you can pause the video at any time during the lesson if you need more time to do the tasks. Now, if you have everything ready, let's start the lesson. For the beginning of the lesson, open your notebooks and write the title, Extreme Sports. Then, write the words that come to your mind when you think of extreme sports. Pause the video to do the task. Now let's take a look at some words. When we think of extreme sports, we usually think of danger. We think of skills necessary to practice these sports. And we think of adrenaline rush, nalet adrenalina. Extreme sports often take place in extremely high places, and you need courage to practice them. They usually involve speed and adventure, and people practicing these sports often perform stunts, vratolomije, akrobacije. Do you have any other ideas? When we talk about extreme sports, we can say that they are different from traditional sports in a number of ways. How and in what way are they different? Pause the video to think about the differences. The first thing that differs is the environment. Traditional sports take place in a controlled environment, such as a course or a field, and extreme sports take place in an uncontrolled environment, such as water or high altitudes. Next thing is training. In traditional sports, training is formal, whereas in extreme sports, training is usually not formal. Next thing are rules. We know the rules of all traditional sports, and we know what we should and shouldn't do, so the rules are clear. In extreme sports, rules are usually not very clear. And another thing are injuries. Traditional sports usually involve minor injuries, whereas in extreme sports, injuries are often severe. Do you agree with these differences? Of course, there are also similarities between traditional and extreme sports. Pause the video again to think about the similarities. What is similar to these sports? What do the athletes need? They need skills and physical abilities to be able to perform any sport. Skills, vještine. They need to be motivated and they need to be determined, odlučni. And when practicing any sport, they need a lot of stamina, izdržljivost. Do you agree with this? Excellent job so far. Now let's take a look at some popular extreme sports. First, you will write the names of some sports into your notebooks. Write the sports that come to your mind first. When you're finished with your list, start the video again. Let's see some ideas. First sport is motocross. Then, rafting, bungee jumping, skydiving, snowboarding, paragliding, ice diving, and zorbing. Which sport did you write in your notebooks? To practice any sport, you need sporting equipment. Let's take a look at some equipment necessary for the sports in our today's lesson. Pads, an ice axe, ropes, a helmet, goggles, a wooden board, skis, a backpack, flippers, an air tank, a parachute, a dry suit, and a jumpsuit. If there is a new word you do not understand in this slide, you can copy the word into your notebooks. As we have already said, today we will take a look and learn something about a couple of extreme sports. The first sport is ice climbing. In the picture, you can see what this sport looks like and what it involves. It seems like a sport you can do only during cold months of the year, but you can actually do it all year round. The best places to do the sport are artificial ice walls, frozen waterfalls, and glaciers, and the necessary equipment are ice climbing boots, ropes, a helmet, ice axes, and gloves. Next sport is cave diving. People should practice this sport during warmer months of the year and in environment with no air. And the necessary equipment is a dry suit, a mask, flippers, an air tank, and lights. Heli-skiing is the name of the next sport. To be able to practice it, people need a helicopter to take them to their starting point, which is the area of untouched snow, also called powder snow. And this is why the weather has to be good. The equipment necessary for this sport are skis, gloves, goggles, ski boots, a shovel, and a helmet. Another sport that is gaining in popularity nowadays is volcano boarding, which is similar to snowboarding. The best time to practice this sport is not specified, but the place to practice it is an active volcano. People can slide down either standing or sitting on the board, and you also need a protective jumpsuit and goggles. And the last sport we will mention is base jumping, a very dangerous sport that involves jumping from high altitudes, wearing a wingsuit or a parachute backpack, and the main idea is to open the parachute or the wingsuit as close to the ground as possible. People have to do it when the weather is good, because otherwise the wind might cause problems. Other equipment necessary for the sport are goggles, proper footwear, and a hard shell protective helmet. Now it's time for you to add a sport of your choice. It has to be an extreme sport, and you have to write the best time to do the sport, the place to do it, and you have to name some necessary equipment. When you have finished with the task, get back to the video. Now that we have introduced some sports, let's play a game to revise what we have learned so far. You will copy this link into your browser, bit.ly extreme sortout, or scan this QR code to open the game. Pause the video to play it, and when you have finished with the game, start the video again. Here are some questions for you to answer. You will write your answers in your notebooks, and the questions are: which of the mentioned sports do you find the most dangerous? and why? Would you like to try any of these sports? What kind of physical abilities do you need to practice these sports? Think about the answers, write them down in your notebooks, and then get back to the video. We will now listen to a famous skateboarder talking about his experience with this sport. While listening, your task is to choose 3 appropriate headings and put them in the correct order. As you can see here on the slide, there are 5 headings given, which means there are 2 you do not need. Now listen carefully and do the task.
I have always loved sports. I remember running around chasing a ball ever since I could stand on my feet. At age 5, I joined a football club, but soon realized that football wasn't what I needed. I joined every sports team in my town and tried every sport there was, but nothing satisfied my need. I wanted something different. When I was 8 years old, a skateboarding competition was held in my town, and that's when I fell in love with skateboarding. I got my first skateboard for my 9th birthday and started practicing. At age 15, I joined a skateboarding club and started training professionally. I know that a lot of people don't think skateboarding is a sport, but to practice it you must be extremely physically fit. You actually need more energy and stamina than in a number of other sports. What I love about skateboarding is that it gives you the opportunity to be creative and show off some innovative tricks. As a professional skateboarder, I practice every day of the week for a couple of hours. So far, I have had some injuries, but nothing severe. However, skateboarding can be dangerous if you are not careful. That's why you should always practice with a helmet and pads. What I would say to anyone interested in taking up this sport is, you must never practice alone. Always have an adult close to you. As I have already said, skateboarding can lead to injuries if you are not careful. But other than that, skateboarding is an extremely fun activity, and if you are persistent, it can lead you to great places.
Now let's check the correct headings. The headings you do not need are competitions around the world and all of his injuries. That's right. And the first appropriate heading is the beginning of his skateboarding adventure. Then, what you need to give and what it gives back. And the last one is things you should be careful about. Good job. Here is another listening task for you. You will rewind the video and listen to the tape again. This time, you need to answer these 5 questions and you will write the answers into your notebooks. The questions are: why did he decide to take up skateboarding? What kind of physical abilities does a person need for skateboarding? How can one prevent injuries? What does he advise to beginners? And what does skateboarding allow a person? When you have finished with the task, get back to the video. Now let's check the answers. He decided to take up skateboarding because none of the other sports was good enough. A person must be extremely physically fit and must have a lot of energy and stamina. To prevent injuries, one should always practice with a helmet and pads. He advises beginners to always have an adult close by and never to practice alone. And skateboarding allows a person to be creative and show off some tricks. We know that every sport has rules that have to be followed in order to prevent injuries and get results. Let's take a look at some rules of 2 sports. The first sport is skateboarding. And the rules are: you must be physically fit, you should wear a helmet and pads, and you could get injured if you're not careful. And another sport is base jumping. And the rules are: you must have proper footwear, you mustn't jump during strong winds, and you should have protective body equipment. As you can see here in the sentences, there are some verbs written in blue. The verbs are must, mustn't, should, and could. Do you know the name of these verbs? These verbs are called modal verbs. Modalni glagoli posebna su vrsta glagola i od ostalih se glagola razlikuju po tome što imaju isti oblik u svim licima, dakle ne dobivaju nastavke bez obzira tko je subjekt rečenice. Iza modalnog glagola uvijek stoji glavni glagol u svom osnovnom obliku, odnosno u infinitivu bez to. Modalni glagoli imaju različite upotrebe. We use modal verbs to express ability, sposobnost, prohibition, zabranu, advice, savjet, possibility, mogućnost, and obligation, obavezu. Now let's take a look at some examples and you will tell me what we use these modal verbs for. The first is can or can't. He can skate very well. What is this modal used for? We use can or can to express ability. Next, should or shouldn't. You should wear a helmet when you go skateboarding. What do we use should or shouldn't for? We use it to give advice. Next verb is the verb must. You must have proper footwear. What is must used for? We use must to express obligation, and its negative form, mustn't. You mustn't jump during strong winds. What do we use mustn't for? We use it to express prohibition. And the last modal is the verb could. You could get injured if you're not careful. What do we use could for? We use it to express possibility. Excellent job. To practice the use of modal verbs, copy this link bit.ly modals IV or scan the QR code to open the game. When you're finished, start the video again. And the task for the end of the lesson is to make a poster about an extreme sport in which you will answer these questions. What is the name of the sport? When can you practice it? Where can you practice it? What equipment do you need? And what are the rules of the sport? For writing the rules of the sport, you have to use modal verbs. When you're finished making the poster, record a video of you presenting it in which you will use 70 to 80 words and send the video to your teacher. You can use these digital online tools to help you do the task. You can use this rubric to assess your poster and your video. You have to take care of these 5 criteria: vocabulary, grammar, the use of modal verbs, pronunciation, message of the poster and creativity, and effort. And a quick self-assessment for the end of the lesson. Read the statements and circle the correct emoji depending on what is true for you. I can name words connected to extreme sports, I can describe an extreme sport, and I can use modal verbs. And dear students, we have come to the end of our today's lesson. I hope you had fun, and I hope you have learned something new. Until some other time, goodbye.